Welcome back. 7 Israeli hostages have been released in Gaza and are now in custody of the Israeli military. The IDF has confirmed in moments from now we could see more of those hostages being released as part of that fragile ceasefire brokered by many leaders of countries with Israel as well as the Hamas. Crowds have erupted in cheers at Tel Aviv's Hostages Square as the news of the release spread. And we have with us Israeli diplomat Ambassador Jeremy Issacharoff, former ambassador of Israel to Germany. Ambassador, thanks for staying with us. Let's just talk about the road ahead as well. But before that, we see on our screens the US President Donald Trump, the man who claims he is the person behind brokering this fragile ceasefire between the Hamas and Israel. But the reality also is that Egypt and Qatar have had a huge role to play, Ambassador.
Absolutely. And I think it's, I don't want to minimize the role of anyone who could contribute to the freeing of the hostages. This is something that has been so central to the Israeli consciousness, and talking about anything to do with security, national security, regional security. This has been very deep in our consciousness for the last 2 years, and it's a great moment of relief that we can see all of the hostages returning. And we're literally in these minutes as we speak, hoping to see the second tranche of 13 hostages being returned to Israeli hands after 7 have already arrived back in Israel. We also have to have the next steps that are going to be more complicated in terms of the hostages that aren't alive. It's possible that not all of them will be returned at this point. And then we have to begin to think of, first of all, Israel as how we get into a healing process and how we create a new strategic reality in Gaza that will provide, greater stability and avoid, future clashes like this.
But the question also, Ambassador, at this point is that there is a ceasefire brokered. But does this mean this is going to be the end of the war, sir? There are many miles to cover before we can really say that, isn't it, Ambassador?
Look, first of all, I think it's the end of this phase of fighting. Let's not forget, Israel is standing opposite Hamas, which is a terrorist organization which is dedicated in its charter to destroying Israel. So as long as Hamas is Hamas, there's not going to be peace between Hamas and Israel, as there was in 1993 when Israel and the Palestinian Authority embarked on the Oslo process. So the most, I hope, the end of the fighting is going to be in place. There will be a ceasefire. There won't be a resumption of fighting as long as no threat is posed towards Israeli citizens, as the threat was on October 7th, when so many were killed and kidnapped. So it's not just dependent on Israel; it's also dependent on the other side. And here, the Trump plan is going to be very critical in changing the leadership, in disarming Hamas, and creating a demilitarized zone without terror in Gaza, and also introducing an interim type of administration and governance there. That's going to be a very critical factor.
Ambassador, do stay with me. We will come back to you in a moment from now if we can, but we have some breaking news coming in and I will have to interrupt this conversation. There's a new chapter in India-Canada ties. The Canadian Foreign Minister is in India, as we know, and this visit signals a thaw in relations. Opening statements there while she speaks, and she is meeting with the External Affairs Minister, S. Jaishankar.
And certainly very welcome. And today we'll be discussing the India-Canada joint statement, which is comprehensive and covers a number of issues that will allow us to continue the work to elevate the bilateral relationship. I appreciate the words you spoke relating to the security dialogue, which, while we elevate the relationship in areas of critical minerals, energy, AI, and climate, to name a few, will continue. The meeting that our officials had relating to security and law enforcement just a few weeks ago here was very productive, and that dialogue will continue. Both of our governments agree on the importance of those dialogues. Both of our governments agree on the importance of elevating the relationship going further. So this joint statement will discuss our mutual plans for re-engagement. It will inform Canadians and Indians alike that we are collectively committed to advancing this relationship now and in the long term, particularly when it comes to our mutual priorities in the Indo-Pacific. So with that, Dhanyavad, thank you so much again. We look forward to the conversation.
All right, so that is the Canadian Foreign Minister there, Anita Anand, speaking as part of the opening statements with her counterpart in India, S. Jaishankar, External Affairs Minister. Now, this is a big visit by the Canadian minister here to India, which we're expecting will reset diplomatic ties between the two countries. Vishal joining me live. Vishal, hoping for a reset with this visit, but it's not really the first in the last few months that we've seen of representatives from both sides meeting on taking the bilateral ties forward.
Yes, that's what we've seen in the last few months, that both the sides have attempted to, bring the ties back on track that had been, taken off track by the incompetent administration of Justin Trudeau, who had repeatedly alleged that Indian authorities were involved behind the slaying of the terrorist in the Canadian soil. But both the sides have rallied in the last few months to bring the ties on track, and they have been successful because respective high commissioners have been appointed and they have already taken charge. We've seen that the Indian High Commissioner to Canada has been seen attending some public meetings in Canada, and the Canadian side has acknowledged this effort, and they have also appointed a High Commissioner. It remains to be seen how this moves forward, because the ties had hit an all-time low when Trudeau was at the helm of affairs in Canada. The Indian side had tried repeatedly to calm the nerves down, but there had been serious allegations from the top levels of the Canadian administration. The top Canadian spy agency had also alleged something similar, that India could be behind many illegal activities on the Canadian soil, but they did not really furnish any proof for these tall claims. Many in the Canadian affairs, they themselves admitted that there was no hard proof as to the big allegation. So those days are over now. We have the ties back on track, and we are looking forward to having the ties being reset.
Sides in the past also, Vishal, have acknowledged the clear momentum for rebuilding trust on both sides, given what we've seen in these relations turning sour over the last couple of years.
That is correct. This will require much needed momentum, and we have that momentum in place, because both the sides have tried to meet each other quite a few times in the last few months. They have been proactive in a lot of these official affairs. As I mentioned, they have been able to establish high commissioners, respective high commissioners in place. These chairs had been empty for the longest time. Back in October 2023 is when Canada and India were involved in the biggest fracas, if you can say that, involving both the sides, because both the high commissioners, respective high commissioners, had been pulled back. Almost all the delegation from both the sides had been pulled back, and that had resulted in the ties being plummeting to the lowest level, the level which we had not seen. Because India and Canada have been allies for the longest time, and that was sort of severed in the short term that Trudeau was there, short term that he tried to sever that with ties. But those ties are now back on track, and we'll have to only look forward as to what will happen now.
And Vishal, let's just very quickly understand from you what's on the agenda. Energy, a big issue. Just take us through what we're expecting in terms of trade and energy talks between the two countries.
When it comes to the agenda of the meeting, we have some details. We have trade diversification. That's one of the biggest things that will be talked about. Then we have energy transformation, because conservation of energy is a topic that affects both the developed and the developing world, and we have both the parties when it comes to India and Canada. And then there is security cooperation in this ever-changing world of this ever-dynamic world of foreign affairs. We have to have security cooperation, which will be discussed, and there will be focus on critical minerals and agriculture, because critical minerals is one topic that dominates almost all the high tables as we speak, because they are used in many chip manufacturing, which in turn are used in some of the biggest technologies we have in place, such as AI.
Vishal, thanks for joining us live. Let's just also listen into the opening statement by India's External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar.
I'm pleased to welcome you to India on your first official visit as Canada's new foreign minister. Our meeting today continues the constructive conversations that we have been having since our telephone call on the 26th of May. India-Canada bilateral relations have been steadily progressing in the last few months. We are working to restore and reinvigorate the mechanisms necessary to advance our partnership. As Prime Minister Modi noted during his meeting with Prime Minister Karni in Kananaskis, India's approach is to move forward with a positive mindset. This morning, you have met the Prime Minister. You have heard from him personally about our vision of cooperation and how best to realize it. I should also take note of the fact that our national security advisors and their teams had a productive meeting on the 18th of September in New Delhi, which was an important first step towards enhancing our security cooperation. Our foreign ministries at the level of secretary or deputy minister also met on the 19th of September to review the overall relationship. Our trade ministers spoke recently, actually on the 11th of October. So when we look at Canada, we see a complementary economy, we see another open society, we see diversity and pluralism, and we believe that that is the basis for a close, sustainable and long-term cooperative framework. Minister, let me also say that both sides for our meeting today have prepared an ambitious roadmap to advance our cooperation in various domains, including trade, investment, agriculture, science and technology, civil nuclear collaboration, AI, critical minerals, and energy. I'm glad that the two High Commissioners have assumed their responsibilities in our respective capitals and are part of today's meeting. This is our High Commissioner with whom you have spoken. Our responsibility as foreign ministers is to shepherd the process of rebuilding our cooperation and to ensure that it delivers on the expectations of our prime ministers and the interests of our people. It means not only taking initiatives in our particular jurisdiction, but to monitor and integrate interactions across the entire breadth of the government. I look forward to doing so, working closely with you. Minister, India and Canada have a long tradition of being active in world affairs. We are members of the G20 and the Commonwealth. Our convergences in the Indo-Pacific are notable. We are strong proponents of effective multilateralism, climate action, and SDG Agenda 2030. We seek to de-risk the international economy today by forging strong partnerships of growing range and depth. Your visit, Minister Anand, affords an opportunity to review the global scenario and exchange perspectives. I would now request you to deliver your opening remarks.
All right, those are the opening statements from External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar and his Canadian counterpart, who is in India to hold talks with the External Affairs Minister. And later in the afternoon at about 4 o'clock, she will also be meeting with the Union Commerce Minister, Piyush Goyal. But moving to the big international story of this hour, 7 Israeli hostages have been released from Gaza and are now in the custody of the Israeli military, the IDF, has confirmed this. Crowds have erupted in cheers at Tel Aviv's Hostages Square as news of the release spread. Donald Trump is in Tel Aviv. He landed about half an hour back. He has been welcomed by the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu. He will be also being accorded the top honor there, the civilian honor by Israel, sometime later today. Now, in return for the hostages, Israel will free 250 Palestinian prisoners and over 1,700 detainees. US President Donald Trump is also going to be heading to Egypt for a summit with about 20 world leaders. And that is the big story that we are tracking here on NDTV 24/7. But there's a letter that the US Prime Minister has also written to the people of Israel. The Israeli Prime Minister's office has shared a heartfelt message written by Netanyahu and his wife Sarah for the returning hostages, welcoming them back after a 2-year ordeal. Let's now bring you the reactions from those families who waited for 2 years for their loved ones who were in the custody of the Hamas to return to them.
Very, very happy, relieved. I think you can see it around the whole square. Like, the Israeli people are relieved and happy. I know. So it's a very unique morning, and maybe a morning that will change much of how we got used to live here in this country. We will get our sanity back.
I can't really trust Hamas that they'll give them back all healthy, all in good shape, all alive. It's very hard to trust them. And I'm worried that bad things are going to happen on the way. I'm worried about the bodies of the hostages that we need to get back as well. And, you know, we've been through so many bad things.
Blake Sifton, NDTV reporter, now joins me live from Tel Aviv. Blake, just take us through what's happening on the ground as I speak with you. We know that 7 of those 20 hostages have been released. What about the other 13? Have they been released yet?
That's right. The 7 hostages have been released. They've been brought by Israeli forces to a military base in Israel. They are currently reuniting with their families and undergoing initial medical and psychological treatment, and they will then be taken to one of 3 medical centers in and around Tel Aviv for more comprehensive medical treatment. Now, the remaining 13 hostages, we understand that Red Cross vehicles have arrived at the site where they will be handed over in southern Gaza. So that process we expect to begin soon. Similarly, from the earlier release, they will be taken from the Red Cross to Israeli forces in Gaza, then to that military base, then to the hospitals in Tel Aviv for treatment. Now, when it comes to the bodies of the deceased hostages, we understand that some of them will be released today. However, we understand that it will take longer to identify the location and retrieve others. U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff has reportedly told the family members of the hostages that it may take quite some time to locate where some of these bodies are, and that an international team will be tasked with finding them. Now, once all of the hostages...
Blake, if you can hear me, go ahead.
Yeah, so once all of the hostages that Israel expects to be released today have been released, we then expect that Israel will release the Palestinian prisoners in exchange. Now, that will include the 1,700 people detained in Gaza throughout the 2 years of this war. They include a number of children as well as medical professionals seized from hospitals. And then also, of course, there'll be the 250 so-called security prisoners. These are prisoners serving life sentences in Israeli jails. They are accused of either involvement in or orchestrating or participating in attacks over the last few decades that killed Israeli civilians and soldiers. We understand that that group, the 250 security prisoners, will be released into the West Bank, with 100 sent there, East Jerusalem with 15 released there, and 135 others will either be released into Gaza or will be sent into exile abroad.
Blake, also a word on Donald Trump as we speak, but before that, just for the benefit of our viewers, what you're seeing on your screens is the convoy of the hostages being taken into Israel across the border in moments from now. These are the first visuals that NDTV is bringing to you. But Blake, coming back to you, the man who's taken center stage in Tel Aviv as I speak with you is US President Donald Trump, who's taken complete credit for what is happening on the ground and unfolding before us. Historic in many ways. But there have been other countries like Egypt and Qatar who've had a huge role to play as well, Blake.
Yes, in many ways, President Trump has willed this entire process into existence. When Hamas responded to his 20-point peace plan, they were quite vague in their response. They said that they would release all of the hostages, and they said that they would cede control of Gaza to a transitional government of Palestinian technocrats. But they ignored almost everything else in that deal, including, crucially, the call on them to disarm and Gaza to be demilitarized. And Prime Minister Netanyahu reportedly viewed that response as negative, as purposely vague. But before he could reply, we understand that President Trump said it showed that Hamas was ready for peace. It was a positive response. So at that stage, Prime Minister Netanyahu had no choice but to go along with the process, to send negotiators to Egypt. And then on the other side, as you say, mediators Qatar and Egypt, as well as Turkey, a major backer of Hamas and hosts some of their leaders, they played a crucial role in leaning very hard on Hamas and forcing Hamas really to make concessions and to bring them to this point. So it really was a combined effort of both the United States and especially President Trump and the mediators, Turkey and other Gulf countries, to lean on both sides to compel them to get to this point. Now, President Trump is currently on his way to Jerusalem. He will meet with Netanyahu at the Knesset. He will meet family members of some of the hostages, and then he will deliver an address to the Knesset. And he will be only the fourth American president to ever do so, and the first in over 17 years since President George W. Bush addressed Israel's parliament in 2008.
All right. Blake, let's look forward now for a moment and understand, does the return of hostages mean that this is the end of the war? Will Hamas remain in power in Gaza is the biggest question I have for you right now.
There are a great deal of questions that remain. I think what we should view this as today and the next few days as essentially a ceasefire, which we've seen two similar ones before, where you have a cessation of hostilities, you have hostages released, and you have prisoners exchanged, and then you have more aid entering Gaza. But on those two previous occasions, the war then renewed. Now, what's different this time is that both sides have agreed in principle to a much wider peace plan, the 20-point peace plan that President Trump is envisioning for the overall end to the war. And certainly he said that the war is over. However, a lot needs to happen to make that happen. In Israel, far-right members of Netanyahu's coalition, for whom he depends on for the survival of his government, they have said that after the hostages are released, if Hamas does not disarm, that Israel should go back to war. But Trump has provided guarantees to Hamas and others that that will not happen. Now, some of the obstacles that need to be overcome: Hamas disarming, Gaza being demilitarized. Those are key obstacles and key issues that Israel is insisting on. Now, Hamas has shown no willingness to give up all of their weapons. They've suggested that perhaps they would give up offensive weapons like rockets, but they will not surrender small arms like their rifles. Also, this transitional government of Palestinian technocrats that's meant to govern Gaza and take over from Hamas. We still don't know who will be involved in that and what process will be used to choose them. Hamas want to have a say in choosing those technocrats. And finally, a key issue is the full withdrawal of Israeli forces from Gaza, because they currently still remain in 53% of Gaza under this phase one of this deal. And their full withdrawal is tied to the progress of this international stabilization force that's meant to enter Gaza and assist with demilitarization. But we still don't know who will participate in that force and when it will be deployed.
And before I let you go, Blake, another question. Let's just focus on Gaza as well for a moment. There have been huge casualties that we've seen in Gaza. The destruction has been massive over the last 2 years. The big question really is, who will redevelop Gaza at this point and who will fund it as well? Is that something we should expect post the talks in Egypt?
That is a major question. The UN estimates that some $50 billion is needed to begin the reconstruction of Gaza. Of course, since this ceasefire came into effect on Friday, we've seen some 500,000 people return to northern Gaza, Palestinian civilians who had fled their homes in Gaza City ahead of and during this Israeli military offensive to seize and occupy Gaza City. Many of them, when they left, said that they thought they were never going to be able to go home, either because the whole city would be destroyed or they'd be permanently displaced. So while they're going back and they are relieved, they're coming back to find widespread destruction. Entire swaths of some of these neighborhoods have been flattened. So yes, the reconstruction, the rehabilitation of critical infrastructure like sewer lines, water lines, bakeries, medical facilities, all of that is a monumental task. And the question, as you say, of who will pay for it remains to be seen. But with major world leaders and major countries involved in this entire process meeting in Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt today, hopefully we may see some clarity on that, among other issues.
Thank you for joining us live, Blake, from Tel Aviv, and adding perspective to that big developing international story that NDTV has been reporting on. Also, just some time back, we heard from the US President Donald Trump while he was on board Air Force One. He was speaking on this fragile ceasefire agreement. Let's just listen into what he had to say.
If the ceasefire does hold, how long until we get to the part of the 20-point peace plan where developers can go in and make Gaza the Riviera of the Middle East?
Well, I don't know about the Riviera for a while, because you take a look at what you have. You have to get people taken care of first. But it's going to start really essentially immediately. I mean, they're going to have to start by removing a lot of structures that you see that are down to the ground. I mean, it's blasted. This is like a demolition site. Almost the entire site is. So you have to get rid of what you have there. You have structures that are very dangerous. They're falling down. If they haven't fallen, they're going to fall down of their own volition. So that process, Peter, is going to start pretty much immediately in that way. Everybody is happy, whether it's Jewish or Muslim or the Arab countries. Every country is dancing in the streets, and it's a point in time I don't think you'd ever see it again. They've never seen it for 3,000 years. If you like one group, you don't like the other group. And if you like the other group, you don't like the first group. And this is the first time they've ever seen where everybody is unified. Because as you know, we're going to Egypt after Israel. And we're going to meet all of the leaders of the very powerful and big countries and very rich countries and others. And they're all into this deal. Everybody's into it. It's never happened before. So I would say this is a lot tougher, but we'll see how it all works out.